Ms. Josephine Ngure, Country Director for Ethiopia African Development Bank. The floor is yours.
Before I go to specifics, let me just note that here in Ethiopia, the contribution of the manufacturing sector still remains very small in terms of GDP, around about 5%. But we know that the number of companies has been growing over time. It's almost tripled over the last 10 years. And that means that the demand for financing in its various forms is also growing. I think another fact that we all know is that in general across the world, small and medium-sized companies and sometimes micro companies have reported facing significant credit constraints. In fact, I would say not just credit constraints, although that's what we talk about, but access to finance in general has been a challenge. And this is impacting growth and investment in many countries and in many cases. Here in Ethiopia, we know, as His Excellency has noted, that the credit to the private sector has been growing in absolute terms. I think in terms of percentages relative to available credit in the country, it hasn't grown as much as it should grow. I think it's been pretty much around about 30%, and some of the studies are indicating that the SMEs continue to note the challenges they're having. I think also I would like to say in the context of the topic of this forum, the credit to agriculture and industry, although it has been growing, I think it's been lower than the credit that has been available to service companies in this country. But it has doubled, so we are seeing some good trends in terms of the companies being able to access funding. I think in general, this is the landscape that we see. Demand is growing. Of course, we want to stimulate the manufacturing sector, and we know that that means we need to think very carefully and creatively about how we are going to finance the private sector. Now, in terms of what this demand would look like in this country, I would like to say, and sorry if I sound a little theoretical here, that evidence across the world pretty much tells us that companies follow a pecking order of finance as they go through the growth cycle. In the beginning, the small businesses are able to finance themselves through the owner's capital and internally generated funds. But as they grow and expand, they realize that that is not enough. And this could be one of the reasons why we have this missing middle phenomenon. If these companies that are growing for any reason are not willing to go out or are not able to go out and get the additional funding that they would need beyond the owner's capital and the funds that they're able to generate internally, then we have a problem. However, I think what we know is that banks, commercial banks, development banks, then come in and provide the additional financing that is required. But we also know that if you talk to SMEs, if you talk to people who are in this room, they will tell you that that is precisely the point where problems kind of start arising, because they go to the bank and for various reasons they're not able to get the kind of money they would need, the amount of money they would need, or they're not ready to have the documents or the information that the banks are asking for. If you talk to the banks, they might actually tell you we don't have enough money, or we're not able, as His Excellency has said, to evaluate the credit standing of these potential borrowers. Having said that, we do know that banks remain a significant source of funding, and not least because we do not have a lot of stock markets across Africa, and that's the case here. Again, in terms of debt, credit from the commercial banks, one of the significant challenges we do have, apart from the amount of credit that companies would access, it is the tenor of the credit. I think in general across Africa and here again in Ethiopia, you'll find that medium to long-term financing from the commercial banks is quite restricted. This is something that we would need to be reflecting on when we think about the growth of companies and availability of external financing at the second stage. And finally, at the third stage, in this pecking order, then companies start thinking beyond the debt and start thinking about where they can get additional equity. Sometimes it's not out of choice, but it is because there is a limitation to how much money a lender, a bank, or a potential lender is willing to give you. They will look at how much equity you have on your balance sheet, and they will start asking you to think about putting in more equity. And as I just said, if you're not able to go to the stock market and get some additional equity or have some angels that can come to your rescue, again, your expansion is limited. Why am I saying this? Because I think when we think about financing SMEs, when we think about supporting the private sector in Ethiopia, we would really need to think about the landscape. What is really the demand like? When we say companies are limited in accessing to finance, what exactly do we mean? I think as potential financiers, what we would need to understand is all companies are at different stages of growth. Companies have different abilities in terms of business development. They have different skills. And so we are designing instruments for supporting these companies. We need to make sure that we are meeting the demands. And I think if you talk to maybe 10 different businesses, they probably will explain to you something that they will summarize as we cannot access finance, but actually the solution will be quite different depending on what their challenge is. Now, just quickly, what I would say, given this kind of situation, if we really want to support the private sector here, we need, as I just said, to think creatively. What do we really want to have? Do we want to develop the capital market? What does that really mean for the small companies, for the medium companies, for the large companies? Credit reference bureaus, is it that the banks don't have information on these companies that want to borrow? And what should we do? How should we work together to develop these credit reference bureaus? What kind of risk mitigation instruments can we develop to support those companies that are actually having serious issues when it comes to managing their risks? I think His Excellency has mentioned.
Can you conclude, please?
Yes. And so in terms of the African Development Bank, I would say that we are working across the entire spectrum. We are working with banks to provide lines of credit that are channeled to SMEs. We are working with private equity funds to provide equity to those companies that need equity. We're providing trade finance lines of credit for those who are involved in trade finance, who need trade finance. And I think it would be remiss of me if I didn't say that really at the end of it all, we are trying to ease doing business by investing here in infrastructure. I know it's not directly access to finance, but a significant part of the cost of businesses, most of them that will be sitting here is infrastructure related costs. So we are involved in that, and we hope that we will continue to work on this and improve the business climate. Thank you.